So I hope you guys thoroughly enjoyed NRL Las Vegas, because I didn't. I'm a Warrington Wolves fan. But anyway, it was made up by the fact I got 2 out of 2 in the opening 2 games of the NRL season, but let's crack on with the 6 remaining games in round 1 and see if we can start the season with a perfect week. Kicking things off, we have the Roosters taking on the Broncos. Now this is quite an interesting matchup for me, and if I am incorrect with this one, I wouldn't be surprised, but there are a few changes to the back line for the Roosters that we'll start with. So of course the usual suspects in Tedesco at 1, Tupou and Young on the wings, Sandon Smith, who's new to starting the season for the Roosters, but has been part of that setup for a little while now. So changes to the back line include Mark Nawaqanitawase, Robert Toya and Chad Townsend. Starting with the back line, Robert Toya is somebody that I'm going to have to learn about a little bit more as the season goes on. You guys will probably know more than me about him as an individual. We'll see how he gets on. He wouldn't be starting if he wasn't trusted. Mark Nawaqanitawase has had a full pre-season now to get used to Rugby League as opposed to Rugby Union where he was brought in from, and at least got a little bit of a taste of Rugby League last year before heading into the season, having to replace the likes of Joseph Suaalii and Joey Manu, who are big losses in the back line that they're having to make up for this year. Sandon Smith is an interesting one, and I do like this halves partnership because Chad Townsend can take on the organisation and kicking responsibilities in general play, but Sandon Smith does have a pretty decent run game and quite a decent short-range kicking game. So I think there's a good balance there in the halves, and the good thing about Sandon Smith, as I mentioned, he's been part of that setup for a good few years, so they understand him, they know what he's capable of, and he's had a chance to develop in this system and could be ready to start the season at a pretty high level, so we'll see how he gets on. Then we move on to the forward pack, which for the Roosters last year was brilliant. Now they lost a couple pieces, but going through this list of Collins, White, Crichton, Radley and Wong as the bigger blokes through the middle and the edges, then you've got Connor Watson in the middle of the front row playing hooker. He's the kind of guy that could do 80 minutes if you need him to. You don't want to have to force players to do that long. A lot of hookers can. I think Connor Watson is one of those guys that could do 80 if you need him to. And he's also one of those players that could transition into that 13 role if absolutely necessary. But they've also got Victor Radley, now playing in the back row, who had plenty of experience last year as he transitioned there, but could always rotate back to 13 with Wong into the back row if needed. They want to shake things up. But Radley's had that kind of switch. But then you've got Crichton on the opposite edge, who, yes, had his problems, but came back into the NRL and was fantastic and has probably established himself currently as maybe the best back rower in the game. He's certainly up there at the moment for a lot of people, but arguably for some, the best back rower in the game. Some will say Martin, and that's fair. It's personal taste for you guys. But I do think the lineup of the Roosters is going to be a little bit tricky for them to adapt starting this season, but I do think they've got good pieces dotted around the squad at the moment where they could certainly have a huge impact on this game. Moving on to the Brisbane Broncos, there's also a slight change to their backline as well, which is currently listed as Cobbo, Mariner, Shibasaki and Arthurs. One thing that I think will be really important for them is Cobbo moving back to right wing after being in left centre last year. There are some players that are just more productive as wingers than they are centres. I think Zach Lomax is a great example of this, and I think Selwyn Cobbo will be a prime example of it as well as the season goes on. Whether they intend to put him back into the centres at some point, we will see, but I think he will be so much more productive over on the right wing, and we'll see how Shibasaki fares connecting with Arthurs over on the left-hand side of the field. Now, we move on to the new halves partnership with Ben Hunt and Adam Reynolds. The only question mark for me is what's the run threat going to be like? Because with no Ezra Mam there, the run threat is obviously weakened. So is there going to be a lot more pressure on the shoulders of Reece Walsh? Possibly. Now, Hunt can control one side of the field, Reynolds the other, and then they might use Reece Walsh as the connection between the two. Now, one thing that the Broncos have liked to do over the last couple of years is spread the ball deep in their own half, early in the tackle count, spread the ball to the edges, get Walsh in a 1v1 against the 3 or 4 man in from the edges, and either he has to beat them with his pace, a step or a bullet pass out wide, and they might be doing a lot more of that this year. I think a lot of the run threat will be on him. Could he be a bit of a target this year? A little bit like the narrative was during State of Origin? Maybe. But looking at the forward pack, Patrick Carrigan starts in the front row alongside Pakes and Haas as his other prop in the forwards. Patrick Carrigan I thought would lock down the number 13 role, but we did see in the Pacific Championships for Australia, he did an incredible job in terms of carries through the middle and defensive work. We know he is quality. But Kobe Hetherington currently has his spot at 13, who I think will do a pretty decent job, especially with carries through the middle. We see our regulars in Jordan Ricky, and Jack Kasevsky is not typically a regular. Brendan Piakura, who was most of last year, is on the bench at the moment, so at least there's an option for someone with a bit more regular experience to come on. So to come to a conclusion for this game, I do really like the forwards of the Roosters. I think they might be slightly more dominant overall throughout the forwards, but I do think Payne Haas can make up for a lot of it with his step that he's developing, but his carries, post-contact meters, quick play the balls, offloads. I think with how good Payne Haas is, he can make up for the deficits that the rest of the forward pack of the Broncos have versus the Roosters. In the backs, James Tedesco is hopefully at his best again this year, but I think with the changes that they've had to make in the back line, with Toya and Noanganitawaze filling in for the likes of Manu and Sawali, it's a real tall task for them to have to offer what those guys were able to last year. Sandon Smith and Townsend is a good partnership in the halves, but Hunt and Reynolds, they know how to control the game. Whoever wants to do it, either of them are capable of doing it. Reece Walsh, one of the most creative, one of the most dangerous players in all of Rugby League at the moment, will find ways to open up this backline of the Roosters. And I think, yeah, the Haas factor, the Hunt, Reynolds and Walsh factor, and Cobbo also in his natural position of right wing, I think we'll just about be able to edge it for the Broncos this week. So I'm going to go with the Broncos to win 1-12 points. Next up, we have the Tigers taking on the Knights. Now, this is another game that I think could be really, really interesting, and if I am incorrect with this one, I wouldn't be surprised. But let's start with the spine that the Tigers have announced for their opening game of the season. So it's currently Mason, Galvin, Luai and De Silva. Assuming that Jareen Bula and Api Coruscant will be the regulars at 1 and 9, I want to focus on Galvin and Luai to start the season for the Tigers. Starting with Galvin. Last year was his rookie season in the NRL, and I think given that he was in what I assume was a negative or unpleasant environment, given that they lost so often, and there were quite a few changes to the spine and a few partnerships in the halves that he had to deal with over the course of the season, I think with the production he already showed last year, he's now had a season under his belt, another fresh preseason in a stronger halves partnership. Lachlan Galvin could be a real exciting player for the Tigers and offer them even more in a season where they're really trying to rebuild and push for a top 8 spot. Moving on to his partner in the halves with Jerome Luai, typically has been a number 6 for the Panthers over the last few years, but there are two key things to point out. Number one, Nathan Cleary was unavailable for long periods of last season for the Panthers, so they asked Jerome Luai to step up as the number 7 to take on the organisation and the kicking game, which he developed over time quite nicely. And also, he was the leader for Samoa versus England in their 2-match test series last year. Samoa, I would say, didn't take the strongest squad they possibly could have taken. I know some players had weddings to go to, and that's completely understandable, but I think there were a few other options that were available that they could have taken. So a lot of pressure and responsibility was put on Jerome Luai to run the show for Samoa, and I think he did a pretty good job given the circumstances and squad that they took to England. So the fact that he's had that kind of experience as the leader, as the 7, as the go-to guy for not only club but country as well, will stand him and the Tigers in good stead going forward. But moving on to some of the other additions, you have Sonia Taruva, Jarrell Skelton, Terrell May, and also on the bench, Royce Hunt will be a huge impact coming off the bench, and Jack Bird, he can fill in a few different roles, whether it has to be number 6, he can also fill in at centre or second row, maybe at lock if absolutely needed. But I think there's a good mix of youth and experience and versatility. I do like this lineup, but let's take a look at the Knights. There was a big question mark over the halfback partnership for the Knights, but they've elected to go with Fletcher Sharp and Jack Cogger. They could have gone with Hastings or with Gamble, but I do quite like Cogger in the number 7 role. I think he offers a lot of stability with organisation and general kicking, and Fletcher Sharp has impressed a lot of people so far in pre-season for the Knights, and in terms of run threat as well, on top of Fletcher Sharp, they've got Gagai on one edge, Best on the other, and Kalen Ponga wherever the hell he's needed as one of the most threatening players in the game right now. In the front row, it's currently Saifiti, Crosland and Thompson. Thompson will certainly get them post-contact meters and quick play the balls for the likes of Phoenix Crosland to work off the back of, who can do long stints if needed. We saw that for New Zealand last year, as well as huge numbers of tackles. A lot of hookers get through a lot of work, but he did a lot more than is typically asked of a hooker anyway. And I think the last player to get onto for the Knights is Kai Pearce-Paul. As an Englishman myself, he is also one of them. It didn't really go too well for him last year, but I do hope that with that year under his belt, he's developed more as a person and a player, and he just fits in a little bit better and has more of a productive season for the Knights. So to come to a conclusion for this game, if the Tigers look a little bit disjointed, that's not going to be too surprising with all the new pieces in there, and it's not the end of the world. Even if they lose the game, it's also not the end of the world and no need to panic. Do keep in mind that if there's some issues and they look a bit clunky with possession, that they are coming up against the Knights, who last year were ranked 6th defensively in the NRL. So it's going to be difficult to break them down anyway. But on the attacking side for the Knights, I think with having Kalen Ponga in there and Gagai and Best, they always offer the possibility of points. And then Sharp and Cogger, I think, will do well from the jump for the Knights to start this campaign. So I'm leaning slightly towards the Knights. So I'm going to go with the Knights to win 1-12 points. Next up, we have the Rabbitohs taking on the Dolphins. Now, the Rabbitohs are kind of going through it at the moment in terms of major injuries, with no Latrell Mitchell and no Cameron Murray. But I want to focus on Jai Gray for a second, because last year when he was asked to play in place of Latrell Mitchell, he looked quite exciting with his run threat and wasn't afraid to try and make things happen by himself. And I think with the Rabbitohs understanding that Mitchell's going to be out for a while, Jai Gray needs the reps. He will get a lot more experience in pre-season, in training, and over the next few weeks to develop as a greater threat for the Rabbitohs, and they'll certainly need him to get up to speed as quickly as possible. But moving on to the halfback partnership, which is currently Cody Walker and Jamie Humphreys, the Rabbitohs need either Humphreys or Dodd to hit the ground running, because if they don't and they struggle in the halves again, they're going to put Cody Walker back to 7, which is fine, Whiten back to 6, which is fine, and that was their best partnership last year as they were going through struggles, but now there's a gap left open in the back line. Who are they going to fill that with some proper quality? They don't want to be weakened defensively, and Jack Whiten is an extremely reliable option there. But on the opposite side to him is Campbell Graham. They could have really done with him last year, but he's someone that I'm so excited to see, fit and ready to go to start the season. Rangy player, good pace, can beat players inside the red zone by himself, real good aerial threat with his height as well. Overall, quality player, can play on the wing if necessary, but Campbell Graham will be a huge threat and a massive inclusion for the Rabbitohs this year, as they at least try to push for top 8. Whether it's possible for them, I don't think it is, but he's one of those guys that is a real dangerous option. In the forwards, I do like Moale, Kalamatangi, Arrow, and a few others. We'll have to see how they get on, but I think Moale always offers quality through the middle with his carries and defensive work, and then Kalamatangi is that Hamal Olakwatu type player. He can transition to 13 if necessary. I know he doesn't like it there. His threat with his run game, the way he can barge players over, he's going to be really important for the Rabbitohs going forwards. But also in the halves, as I mentioned earlier, if there's an issue there, Jaden Sullivan can fit in the number 7 role and does have a decent run game when he's ready to switch things on. It's a little bit few and far between, but we'll have to see how they utilise him this year. But moving on to the Dolphins, in the spine they currently have Tabai Fidau, O'Sullivan, Katoa and Marshall King. Working back from that, the forwards might lose out for the Dolphins a couple times in some games, but I do think that Jeremy Marshall-King can help to make up for the deficits that they have in the forwards. Then you've got Isaiah Katoa in the number 7 role. Wasn't too bad in 2023, but stepped up massively last year in 2024, and we saw that for his performances and leadership for Tonga especially at the Pacific Championships last year against the likes of Australia and New Zealand. So can he take that kind of maturity and development into this year? Hopefully. Can he take a step up? Hopefully. And if he does, he'll be one exciting and really valuable number 7 in the NRL for the Dolphins. But moving on to Sean O'Sullivan, pretty good kicking game actually, quite underrated. He's got a couple 40-20s in there somewhere and a decent Burton bomb hidden away in his kicking game as well. But also not bad in terms of the run threat as well. But Tabai Fidau can make up for those lapses there. There's no Cody Nikarima, but I do like Sean O'Sullivan. I think he adds stability. He will add calmness and maturity into that team, so I'm not too worried about that. But in terms of other run threats available, with the likes of Nikarima unavailable for this game, you've got Avarillo and Farmworth. They will be massive. In the forwards, Kafusi and Saifiti in the front row, but then Kulukefu Finifeiwaki is a real exciting prospect. We only saw him a little bit for the Cowboys over the last couple of years, but I think starting, hopefully getting regular minutes for the Dolphins, he can really flourish and offer a lot of quality. At the moment, I do think with the changes and difficulties that the Rabbitohs are having to go through and the overall quality that's running through this Dolphins lineup, I just cannot see this going any other way. So I'm going to go with the Dolphins to win 13+. Sorry to cut you off, guys, but it's just occurred to me that some of you might really like this hoodie. And if you want to get one for yourself, or even buy one for a friend, you can do. If you just go to the link in the description down below and look for the Kinetic Rugby League store, you can check out this Razor design, the Guardian or the Capital design, and it's the equivalent of 50 Great British pounds. And after a quick Google search, that tells me in Australian dollars, it's $101.82. But what do you get with that money? Well, I'll tell you. You can customize those hoodies into any colours you like. Let's say, for example, you're a Sydney Roosters fan and you like this Razor design. Well, you can get that. Let's say you're a Brisbane Broncos fan and you like the Guardian design. Well, you can get that. Let's say you're a Parramatta Eels fan and you like the Capital design. Well, guess what? You can get that. But what do you get for the cost? I will tell you. Maybe you've got a few different designs in mind that you want to try. Well, great. Once you've paid for the fee of the hoodie, you get up to 5 mock-up changes so you can be happy with the design and colour scheme that you're going for before it's accepted, ordered and shipped to you. But to get onto shipping, you could have ordered from Australia, Tonga, Brazil, America. Guess what? The shipping is included in the fee. How great is that? And the cost is the same for all sizes as well. So if you want this hoodie, go to the link in the description down below and order one today. Next up, we have the Dragons taking on the Bulldogs in what could be the game of the round. So some of the major signings that the Dragons made in the off-season was Gutherson, Holmes and Cook. I will get on to Ilias, but starting with those three. Gutherson, a coach's dream, he'll move mountains or die trying. Holmes offers a lot of maturity and stability, quality defensively and offensively in the back line. Cook can break lines from dummy half. He's a little bit like Jeremy Marshall-King with the Dolphins, where if they're kind of lacking in the forwards, he can make up for any deficits. But I think this forward pack of the Dragons looks pretty strong, and they can win on a lot of occasions. But moving on to Lachlan Ilias in the halves, I think his biggest issue at the Rabbitohs was that he got too comfortable. He didn't really have any competition there, and he could just fall back on Cody Walker if he needed to, and he'd bail him out of a lot of situations. So he got too comfortable at the Rabbitohs. But we did see that for Greece, when they were lacking a lot of firepower versus a lot of other nations in the 2022 Rugby League World Cup, Lachlan Ilias got them ticking, put them on the front foot and looked really creative and showed a lot of real quality that we just hadn't seen for him at the Rabbitohs, and I think that can be drawn out of him for the Dragons this year. Pair that with Cal Flanagan, who a lot of people recognised that he had an improved season from 2023 to 2024. A lot of people just saying, oh, that was Ben Hunt. I don't think they're giving Flanagan enough credit because his organisation is fine and his short-range kicking game is actually pretty decent, and he will punish a lot of teams from inside the red zone with a short-range kicking game, and he just looked a lot more comfortable. And I think with him and Ilias, I think together, there's something about that for me I think will just work. Worst case scenario, you've got Gutherson there, you've got Holmes, Tuipulotu, Suli, Cook, as well as Leilua, Sewer and DeBellin in the forwards as well. They've got quality all over this side. They can definitely beat teams up through the middle. But moving on to the Bulldogs, Connor Tracy at fullback I think adds a lot of stability and calmness for them. I think he's a really great balance in the spine. Then you've got Burton and Sexton. This was interesting when I looked into this. So, because the Bulldogs started with Drew Hutchison at 7 last year, the first 11 games, they'd won 5, lost 6. I'm pretty sure they were 10th, maybe 11th, same points as the Dragons. And then the next 11 games, Toby Sexton is partnering with Burton. They then move up to 4th after that period of time. Coincidence? Maybe. But Toby Sexton now starting the season with Burton, getting a pre-season as the two starting halves, getting those reps together will be huge going into the season, as Serraldo's looking to continue to develop the defensive side of the game, which was, I think, 3rd best overall in the NRL last year. But on the attacking side, they got the likes of Bronson Cherry, who can continue to develop. Stephen Crichton, who is a threat on both sides of the ball. He's incredible and a great leader as well. And then you got Marnie through the middle, then the likes of Kickow and Preston on the edges. In terms of attack, the Bulldogs could be better than they were last year, which would be a great start. But defensively, given the pieces that they've managed to keep who are defensively brilliant, namely Kickow, Preston, Crichton and Cherry, they will be really solid defensively. Now, I do like what the Dragons could do this year, but with how the Bulldogs finished last year and the pieces they've got in that team, and especially with the clarity that they'll have in the spine now, starting with Burton and Sexton, their attack could be on a different level to what it was in 2024. So I do think the Bulldogs should be okay in this one. There is something in the Dragons that they can kind of drag themselves through difficult games, but I do think the Bulldogs have got this one, so I'm going to go with the Bulldogs to win 1 to 12 points. Next up, we have the Seagulls taking on the Cowboys. Now, let's look at this lineup for the Seagulls, actually. So, in the backs, it's Trbojevic, Saab, Cooler, Garrick Hopewati, Brooks and Evans. What a lineup that is. That is absolutely incredible, with Tom Trbojevic fit and ready to go to start the season. Jason Saab, Tolu Cooler, one of the quickest right edges you will see ever in the game. Brooks and Cherry Evans also have a year under their belts. Going into this year, they've hopefully built a stronger connection. Cherry Evans will take on the kicking game, Brooks the run game. But hopefully, the Manly Seagulls will look as potent in attack as I think they will do. And in the front row, Jazz Tavanga is a question mark for me. I think kind of slows the ruck down a little bit. But my God, Taniela Paseka and Siasiwa Takiaho can make up for that massively and will bully some forward packs this year. They will bully the hell out of some teams. And then you've also got Ben Trbojevic in the back row, who's developing year on year, is getting a little bit better. Jake Trbojevic in the 13 role, a lot of maturity, great leadership, but then Hamol Olakawatu on the right edge. What a threat he is. So the Manly Seagulls could look devastating this year. Moving on to the Cowboys, there's a bit of a question mark for me in the backs in this game. I do like Drinkwater, Dearden and Taulangi. They're of course quality players. Drinkwater and Dearden will have a lot of production for the Cowboys this year, but my main concerns are Duffy, Vilea, Purdue and Burns. Are they going to get up to speed quickly enough on the attacking side or even defensive side of the game? We'll have to see. So that's a bit of a question mark for me. I think Dearden and Drinkwater can drag them through the rough patches a little bit, but that's only to a certain extent. The rest of them will have to get up to speed very, very quickly. But in the forwards, McLean, Robson, McIntyre, Bateman, Nanai and Cotter. That's a strong forward pack. I don't think Bateman's going to offer too much on the attacking side, but in terms of defence, is strong and reliable, and possibly in this lineup could add some production as the season goes on. But Nanai will certainly make up for that on the opposite edge. Cotter through the middle, can play a few different positions. He can play in the back row as well, or in the front row, but Cotter is an incredibly reliable option to have. And then Reece Robson up front with the quick play of the balls, can do 80 minutes if needed, gets stuck in defensively, and is able to break lines from the ruck. He is going to be huge through the middle for the Cowboys this year. I do think the forwards look quite strong and will match well at times against the Seagulls, but for me in this game, the Seagulls just look massive, and in the backs, there's just more clarity, they'll look more comfortable, there's so much more speed. I think the Seagulls should be somewhat comfortable in this game. I think Drinkwater and Dearden will have their moments, but the Seagulls all throughout this lineup could really push for top 4, maybe top 3, and a sneaky top 2 if they really click with what their potential could allow. But I'm going to go with the Seagulls to win 13+. Finally, we have the Storm taking on the Eels. Now, I actually want to start with the Eels because this could be a tricky one for them, unfortunately. But they have Iongi starting at fullback. He's somebody that I don't really know about yet, so he's someone I'm going to have to learn about as the season goes on. But he wouldn't get the starting role at fullback for the Eels if they didn't at least trust him. So I will trust that he's reliable enough. You guys will know more about him than I do, and I will learn and pay attention as the weeks go by. Brown, there are complications there with him at the moment, and Ronald Volkman is not Mitchell Moses, as we know. So I think without Moses, they're really going to struggle to control this game. I like Jake Tango. I really like Zach Lomax, but I think taking him from the wing, putting him back to centre, I think removes some of the production that he could have. I mentioned with Selwyn Cobbo, some players, when they move from centre to wing, just have more production, and somehow it works for them. Maybe this will take a little bit of sting out of their attack, having Lomax at centre instead of the wing. I also do like Penasini, who's a real strong run threat deep inside their own half. The forwards in off Hengawi and Parlo, I think, will be really strong through the middle, and Jermaine Hopgood will be solid defensively, but the firepower all throughout this squad just isn't strong enough to compete with this lineup. I'm pretty much just going to read the Melbourne Storm lineup, and I think most of you will then agree with the few comments and prediction, but it's Pappenhausen, Warbrick, Howarth, Meaney, Coates, Munster and Hughes. They'll control the game with Hughes and Munster. Pappenhausen, fit and ready to go, will demolish some back lines. Jack Howarth is a young lad, but got plenty of experience last year, and he's ready to go, getting a starting role in the centres. Stefano Utokamanu, Grant, King, Bloor, Katoa and Liero. Those back three in Bloor, Katoa and Liero, really solid in terms of attacking carries and defensive work, really reliable, really mature players, and fantastic year from Eliezer Katoa especially. Stefano Utokamanu will bully players. Josh King, I think, will continue to put in hard work, and Harry Grant, the best hooker in the game right now, will punish everybody, unfortunately. And then the main man, Tyron Wishart, who I loved watching last year. If it all falls apart, they need some stability at 13, or at 9, or at 6, or at 7, Tyron Wishart will get you on the right path. He's a quality player. He could get a starting role at 6 or 7 anywhere in the league, I think. If you want to rebuild a team, he's one of the players I go to. I absolutely love him, and I think he will improve even more so this year, which is pretty scary. But yeah, the lineup of Melbourne Storm is just incredible. So I'm going to go with the Storm to win, 13+. So that's going to be it for this video. If you have your own predictions, please do let me know in the comments down below. I'm interested to hear what you guys think and answer the Rugby League fan question that I've pinned in the comments below as well. If you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like. It does help to get the video out there to more people, and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with more Rugby League content. But that's going to be it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.